Was that your margarita dance?
Or maybe it was my slow dance in the 7th grade. I don't know. Hands were going. I don't know what happened right there. All in on this one.
I need a straitjacket and a
Some stars of a popular auction show took a break at Chiele and never returned to your screens.
They flash cash, crack lockers, and every now and then someone yells, "Yuuup!" But not everybody leaves Storage Wars a winner. Jarrod Schulz spent more than a decade duking it out in those dusty aisles, and he's finally spilling the tea. He says a handful of familiar faces weren't exactly what they seemed, and that some of the so-called TV gold turned out to be more like fool's gold. So sit back as we go through the list that, according to him, is still stirring up conversation in the cast's group chats. Dave Hester. The first person worth talking about is Dave the Mogul Hester, the guy best known for trademarking his signature catchphrase, "Yuuup." If you've ever watched Storage Wars, you know he quickly became the cast member people love to dislike. He was brash, competitive, and never shy about ruffling feathers at an auction, which made for great TV. But in 2012, things took a big turn. After he was let go from the show, Hester decided to take the whole production to court, and that's when some behind-the-scenes secrets started coming to light. Hester filed a lawsuit against A&E and the production company, claiming the show wasn't as spontaneous as it looked. According to him, producers sometimes salted storage lockers. That is, they planted valuable or unusual items to make certain episodes more entertaining. In his court filings, Hester pointed to examples like a classic BMW that conveniently turned up under a pile of junk, and alleged that producers would even cover the costs of lockers for cast members who weren't having much luck, just to keep them competitive and interesting on camera. He also claimed that some of the interviews, which always seemed off the cuff, were actually scripted. Naturally, the network pushed back. A&E dismissed the lawsuit as a way for Hester to distract from his own contract issues, suggesting it was really about failed negotiations rather than shady production practices. Their legal team argued that Storage Wars was a form of entertainment protected by the First Amendment, meaning it didn't need to follow the same rules as a game show or contest. The judge threw out some of Hester's claims, but the wrongful termination part of the case was allowed to move forward. The legal back and forth stretched on for nearly 2 years before both sides reached a confidential settlement in 2014. The terms were never made public, but by then the bigger impact was already playing out in the court of public opinion. Word about possible rigging spread among fans, and once that seed of doubt was planted, it was hard to watch the show the same way. Jarrod, one of the other cast members, later described the whole thing as a grenade in the storage aisle. Once it went off, trust in the show was badly shaken. Hester eventually returned to Storage Wars, but his comeback didn't erase the skepticism. Viewers started looking at locker reveals with a more critical eye, wondering if each surprise find was truly authentic. Ratings wavered, and although the show remained popular for a while, it never fully shook off the reputation that parts of it were staged. Even today, when people talk about reality TV being too scripted, Hester's lawsuit is one of those examples that still gets brought up. The Dotsons versus Hester. Dan and Laura Dotson, the husband and wife auctioneers at the heart of Storage Wars, are famous for their lightning-fast chant, "Seriously, they can rattle off bids quicker than most people can order coffee." But even they couldn't talk their way out of one of the show's wildest behind-the-scenes blow-ups. During the filming of Season 5 in Riverside, California, tensions boiled over in a way nobody expected. The whole thing apparently started when Dave Hester thought Dan had missed one of his bids. Normally, that kind of mix-up might just cause some grumbling, but reports suggest that producers saw a chance for a little drama and nudged Hester to bring it up on camera. So he did, and when Dan brushed him off, Hester kept pushing. What started as a back-and-forth argument soon spiraled into something much messier. Before long, words turned into shoves, and suddenly Dan and Dave were in a full-on scuffle. In the middle of it all, Laura Dotson reportedly jumped in to defend her husband, even climbing onto Hester's back at one point. Things got so physical that she ended up on the ground, and the whole set was thrown into chaos. Cameras were shut off, but the moment didn't completely disappear. Cell phone clips from the aftermath surfaced, showing Laura shouting at Hester, accusing him of attacking her and demanding that he get off the set. The fight brought production to a standstill. Hester was said to have been kicked off the premises that day, and later claimed he went to the hospital for a tetanus shot because Laura had scratched him badly enough to draw blood. For the rest of the cast, the brawl was a shocking reminder that the tension on screen wasn't just for show. Jarrod, who witnessed the whole thing, later joked that if even the auctioneers couldn't keep things civil, there wasn't much hope for anyone else to play nice. Afterward, the producers had no choice but to tighten security. Suddenly, what had once felt like a quirky competition with some playful rivalries started to feel more like a pressure cooker. Trust among the cast was shaky at best, and the easygoing vibe of the early seasons was replaced by something heavier, like everyone was waiting for the next fight to break out. Brandy Passante. This is where things started to feel a little messy. The point where Storage Wars stopped being just a reality show about storage lockers and started overlapping with the cast's real lives in a way that wasn't always comfortable. For a long time, Jarrod Schulz and Brandy Passante were considered the show's power couple. They were nicknamed the Young Guns, and their playful banter and lighthearted bickering gave the series some of its funniest, most relatable moments. Fans loved watching them go back and forth, and it helped balance out some of the more intense personalities on the show. Behind the scenes, though, their relationship wasn't nearly as solid as it looked on TV. Jarrod and Brandy met back in 1999, built a business together, and eventually had 2 kids. Interestingly, despite their on-screen chemistry and even their spin-off show, Brandy and Jared, Married to the Job, which only ran for 8 episodes in 2014, they never actually tied the knot. By the time season 12 wrapped up in 2018, they had quietly gone their separate ways, though fans wouldn't learn about it right away. It wasn't until Storage Wars returned in 2021 after a 2-year break that the split finally became public. During the season 13 premiere, Brandy casually announced on camera, "I'm not with Jarrod anymore." And just like that, viewers realized their favorite duo was done for good. From then on, the tension was obvious. Producers tried to work around it, scheduling separate shoot days and putting them head-to-head as individual buyers instead of a team. While that made for some awkwardly watchable TV, it also made things uncomfortable for everyone involved, especially as personal disagreements bled into the work environment. Things got even more complicated in April 2021, when Jarrod was charged with misdemeanor domestic violence battery after an incident at a bar in Orange County. Brandy had been out with friends when Jarrod showed up, and according to reports, an argument broke out that ended with him allegedly pushing her twice. Jarrod denied that any physical contact happened, and eventually the case was dismissed, but the headlines alone were damaging. For viewers who had once rooted for the couple, the story was a stark reminder that reality TV drama doesn't always stay confined to the screen. In later interviews, Jarrod suggested that Brandy could have stepped in to help de-escalate the situation, or keep it more private, instead of letting it spill into the public narrative of the show. Whether that's fair or not is up for debate, but either way, their breakup shifted the tone of Storage Wars. What had once been a fun dynamic between 2 people chasing lockers together slowly turned into a soap opera about their separation. And for many fans, it marked the end of the show's lighter, more carefree era. Barry Weiss. Barry Weiss, better known as the Collector, was the guy who made Storage Wars feel less like a competition and more like a quirky road trip with your eccentric uncle. He'd show up in loud Technicolor shirts, sporting vintage sunglasses, and always had a one-liner ready to drop. Unlike the other buyers who were sweating over margins and resale math, Barry was chasing oddities. He'd bring psychics, use night vision goggles, and roll up in one of his many flashy cars, because why not? For a lot of fans, that made him instantly lovable. He wasn't there to win auctions in the traditional sense, he was there to have fun. Barry had already retired from the antique business before joining the show, so unlike his castmates, he didn't depend on lockers to make a living. His collector-first mindset meant he could spend thousands of dollars on a unit if there was just one unusual item that caught his eye. To him, a funky old sign, a wooden statue with glass eyes, or some odd motorcycle part was worth the gamble, even if the rest of the locker was junk. For example, he once dropped $1,700 on a pile of motorcycle parts, and later turned a profit, but other times he'd pay $1,500 just to snag one bizarre collectible he wanted to keep. That approach might have been great television, but it also threw off the rhythm of the auctions. While the rest of the buyers were carefully calculating resale value, Barry was bidding based on gut instinct and curiosity, often driving prices higher just because he felt like it. Jarrod, in particular, thought it warped the game. To him, the auctions were supposed to be about skill, knowing what to bid, what to pass on, and how to make a living from reselling. Barry's unpredictable style made it feel more like a sideshow. Producers, of course, leaned into Barry's antics because viewers loved them. His oddball charm pulled in a younger, more casual audience who weren't necessarily resale junkies, but longtime fans and actual auction enthusiasts sometimes felt the show was drifting away from its roots. As Jarrod later put it, Barry had turned chess into clown cars. It wasn't that Barry did anything wrong, he was just being himself, but his presence highlighted the tension between the show's original concept as a gritty look at storage auctions and its evolution into something closer to comedy-driven entertainment. Renee Neoda. Renee Neoda, the German-born thrift store owner from San Diego, quickly built a reputation on storage wars as the guy who really knew his merchandise. If you pulled some random knick-knack out of a locker, chances are Renee could tell you exactly what it was worth and where it might sell, sometimes down to the dollar. That kind of expertise gave him an edge, and at first, Jarrod respected him for it. Renee clearly wasn't just winging it. He came into auctions with years of buying and selling under his belt. But as the seasons went on, that mutual respect started to wear thin. Their friendly rivalry gradually turned into something more personal, and social media only poured fuel on the fire. The tension really boiled over during a multi-episode storyline involving a locker full of vintage video games, one of those dream finds that collectors drool over. Jarrod ended up with the winning bid, but after the episodes aired, Renee went online and claimed the only reason Jarrod got the locker was because producers needed a story. From there, things snowballed. Renee started posting YouTube videos and live streams where he aired his unfiltered thoughts about the show. He argued that his big wins were downplayed in editing while Jarrod's were exaggerated for drama. He even went so far as to dissect episode appraisals, pointing out what he believed were inaccuracies and suggesting that producers were bending the truth to favor certain cast members. Jarrod, of course, didn't take kindly to that. Soon the feud spilled across platforms, with Instagram posts, petty tweets, and YouTube rants keeping the back and forth alive. For fans, what had once been a lighthearted treasure hunt started to feel like getting dragged into a schoolyard argument. Instead of debating whether a locker was worth the bid, the conversation became about who could throw the sharper insult online. Looking back, Jarrod blames Renee for leaning too hard into the online drama. saying it shifted the focus away from what made Storage Wars special in the first place. The thrill of the hunt, the surprise of a good find, and the quirky personalities bouncing off each other. In his view, Renee turned that old-school charm into clickbait, and once that line was crossed, it was hard for the show to feel as authentic as it once did. Next, we have the salting scandal. Dave Hester's lawsuit might have kicked the door open, but what really kept the salting controversy alive were the little details people started noticing, the kind that spread through word of mouth on set and sharp-eyed fans catching things at home. In his court filings, Hester didn't just make vague claims, he pointed to specific examples. He said producers planted valuable items, including a Jack Wilkinson Smith painting he bought for just $750 and later resold for a staggering $155,000. There were also claims about a BMW Mini hidden under trash and even a stack of Elvis Presley death announcement newspapers turning up in a unit. Some crew members quietly confirmed that items were sometimes supplied by production, or that cast members were asked to lend their own belongings so they could be staged inside a locker for the cameras. Jarrod says he noticed things that didn't quite add up even before all of this became public. He remembers checking out a locker the day before an auction, only to come back and suddenly find a perfect collection of mint-condition Star Wars figures inside. According to him, producers pulled him aside and told him to bid big, look shocked. He played along, but later admitted the whole thing left him uneasy. Once Hester's lawsuit made headlines, fans became amateur detectives. Online forums, especially Reddit, lit up with people combing through episodes frame by frame. They pointed out inconsistencies, like a supposedly vintage safe that, when opened, contained a newspaper printed the very day of filming. These kinds of discoveries started to snowball, fueling the idea that Storage Wars wasn't as authentic as it appeared. That shift in perception really hurt the show. While it still had plenty of casual viewers, the more dedicated audience, people who tuned in for the thrill of the hunt and the idea of genuine risk, began losing faith. Reports at the time even suggested that live premiere viewership dropped by nearly 2 million during the height of the scandal. As Jarrod later summed it up, "You can't unring that bell." Once the doubt was out there, it stuck, and the show's credibility never fully bounced back. Pay disputes and cast exodus. Behind the scenes, the real struggle wasn't about lockers or hidden treasures, it was about money. As the show got more popular, the cast naturally started asking for bigger paychecks, but the network wasn't always on board with that. One of the biggest examples was Daryl the Gambler Sheets, who'd been around since the very beginning. When it came time for what should have been his 11th season, he was reportedly told his per-episode rate was being cut almost in half, from around $30,000 to $15,000. On top of that, they only wanted him to appear in a handful of episodes, which felt to him like they were slowly edging him out to make room for cheaper, newer faces. Instead of sticking it out, Daryl decided to step away. He and the network eventually made peace, but his departure highlighted a bigger issue. According to Jarrod, the network even used Daryl's exit as a warning sign. Basically, if you complained too much about how things were run or asked for more money, you might be next. Some of the other originals faded away too. Barry Weiss went off to do his own thing, the Harris brothers dropped out, and over time, the lineup started to feel more like a revolving door of newcomers who never really connected with fans the same way. All of that, plus the tension around money, chipped away at the show's chemistry. Even the crew lunches, which used to be full of energy and gossip, reportedly turned quiet, with people just scrolling their phones. The ratings slipped, and eventually A&E moved Storage Wars from its prime Wednesday slot to the much tougher Friday night spot, which felt like the beginning of the end. The violation of privacy. For a lot of reality stars, fame ends up being a double-edged sword. And for Renee and Neoda, that edge cut into their sense of security. Their San Diego shop, the Bargain Hunters thrift store, was practically another cast member on the show. It got plenty of screen time, which was great for business, but also made it a really obvious target. Unfortunately, in May 2019, that target got hit. Early one Saturday morning around 4 a.m., burglars smashed through the front doors and went straight for the display cases, grabbing a stash of rare coins before taking off. Renee was understandably furious. He put up a video online showing the aftermath and didn't hold back, calling the thieves the lowest scumbags out there. He also mentioned that the silent alarm went off right away, which probably scared them into leaving before they could take anything bigger, like a $1,500 Hank Aaron rookie card that luckily they completely overlooked. The stolen coins were worth about $2,000, but the damage to the store itself was around the same, and the whole situation left the couple shaken. Jarrod later pointed to the break-in as proof of how the show exposed the cast's personal lives for entertainment without giving them any kind of real protection. For Renee and Casey, it wasn't just about the money. It was the sense that their lives had been made more vulnerable because of the spotlight. And for fans, hearing about incidents like this made the show feel less about quirky treasure hunts and more about the risks that came with being recognizable, which may have been one more reason people started tuning out. The failed reboot. After a couple of years off the air, A&E decided to bring Storage Wars back in 2021, hoping to recapture some of the charm that had made the show such a hit. They leaned heavily on nostalgia, bringing back familiar faces like Brandy, Daryl, Renee, and even Dave Hester, while also introducing a handful of new buyers and updating the look of the show with slicker graphics and sharper editing. On paper, it seemed like a winning formula. The veterans would bring credibility, the newcomers could shake things up, and the new production tweaks were supposed to give the series a modern feel. But for a lot of longtime fans, the magic just wasn't there. Social media lit up almost immediately, with viewers poking fun at the recycled rivalries and what felt like overly staged drama. Watching Jarrod and Brandy, who had broken up since the original run, interact on camera was awkward enough to make some fans cringe. What once felt like playful competition now came across as uncomfortable tension, and many people felt like they were watching a show trying too hard to manufacture moments that used to come naturally. Jarrod himself didn't stick around for long. He left after just 2 episodes, but he continued to speak out about what he saw as the bigger problems behind the scenes. One of his biggest complaints was about an editing trick known as frankenbiting, where editors stitch together old audio clips and reaction shots to create dialogue that never actually happened. Essentially, sentences were pieced together word by word from different interviews to make it seem like he was saying things he never said. For him, this was more than just a minor annoyance. It felt like a fundamental betrayal of the authenticity that had made the show appealing in the first place. The ratings told a similar story. For the first time in Storage Wars history, viewership fell below 1 million, proving that nostalgia alone wasn't enough to sustain the series. Critics and fans alike saw the reboot as a cautionary tale. The chemistry that once carried the show couldn't be recreated just by bringing back familiar faces and updating the graphics. As Jarrod summed it up bluntly, trying to revive the series was like detailing a totaled car. The show that had once ruled Wednesday nights and dominated cable ratings was now limping along, struggling to find an audience, and clearly running on fumes. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please give this video a like, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more behind-the-scenes stories like this. And we'd love to hear what you think about the show in general. Drop your thoughts in the comments down below.